All right, this is a response to 70 Sports TV's video talking about Allen Iverson, and in particular, Skip Bayless's stupid-ass opinion that Allen Iverson is not a Hall of Famer. And I agree with 70 Sports TV 100%. Allen Iverson is a Hall of Famer. And Skip Bayless is, at best, a hypocrite, and at worst, a hypocrite and a bigot. Now, some people are like, well, how could he be a bigot and he has Lil Wayne as a friend? Well, Archie Bunker, like Lionel Jefferson, but he still was a bigot. You know. Lionel, I treat you just like everybody else. You know, I let you come in through the front door instead of the back like other people would have you there. I mean, he's still a bigot. All right. Number one, Skip Bayless seems to have a problem with African American men who are opinionated, I guess in his mind, aggressive, disrespectful, and immersed in hip-hop culture, so to speak. There's some people like, well, how could it be possible? He likes Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne and him are friends. But like 70 Sports TV put it brilliantly in his video yesterday, Lil Wayne's a coon. This is the same guy who goes on national television in the atmosphere that we're in now, all right, and says that he's never experienced racism in his life. But just a couple of years ago, and this was brought up in 70 Sports TV's comment section, I had forgotten about this. Just a couple of years ago, he cried racism when he wasn't given free tickets by the Oklahoma City Thunder. Remember that? And I think he did the same thing with Miami Heat. He called out racism then. That wasn't probably even a realistic cry for racism. But he called it then. But now he gets on our television when we really need a voice out there. And he says he's never experienced racism. But anyway, the thing that gets me about Skip Bayless is he tends to criticize Allen Iverson by saying that, you know, he thought that he was selfish. And that he was me, shoot the basketball. He wasn't a good point guard. Yada, yada, yada. Saying he only averaged about 6 assists a game for his career. Shot the ball a lot. May not have had his highest shooting percentage. I don't know if he referenced that, but, you know, basically trying to say he was a ball hog. And he didn't really appreciate the hip-hop culture that he brought in and yada, 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 whatever, right? So as I'm listening to this, the first thing that pops into my brain is, okay, well, if you feel this way about Allen Iverson, then you should feel the same way about Pete Maravich. I mean, Pete Maravich was this tremendous LSU player. Probably the greatest LSU player of all time. All right, still holds records. Averaged almost 44. What was it? 44 points per game for his career in college. 44 points per game. He was expected to dominate the NBA, and while he did have a tremendous NBA career, it was somewhat underwhelming compared to his collegiate career. But some of the criticism that Pistol Pete Maravich got was that he didn't know whether he wanted to be a shooting guard or a point guard. Okay. He averaged about 24 points per game, I believe, for his career. But he didn't shoot a high percentage. He was only shot 44%. And he was 6'5", 200 pounds. Some sources say he was 6'6", actually. But he's 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds, a big guard for that era. But only shot 44% from the field. Turned the ball over quite frequently, considering. And he could be erratic at times. You know, he was much more, while he was sensational, he was a revolutionary player, he was erratic. But see, it's funny how, in Skip's mind, a guy like Pete Maravich is exciting and revolutionary. Because Pete Maravich is one of the ones that brought the floppy socks and the sideburns and the mustache and the long hair to the NBA, along with later on with a guy like Bill Walton. This brought in the hippie culture, okay, into the NBA. Iverson does the same thing, is a revolutionary player with the tattoos and, with the afro later on the cornrows, and he was one of the first guys to wear the sleeves. He was the first guy to bring in the sleeves and, all that type of stuff, and extra baggy shorts. Allen Iverson did that. This was a cultural, iconic player. Later on, you had guys like Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter copy certain things about him. Allen Iverson is the guy who brought the ISO game into what you guys see now. Michael Jordan did it to an extent, but Michael didn't really hold the ball like that. Allen Iverson was the guy who was the ball handler, doing all the crossover and the ball handling movements. That was Allen Iverson that you see now. What you guys see now in the NBA, that has come from and was brought to you originally, and better in my opinion, but compared to most guys now, by Allen Iverson and tattoos. Allen Iverson. But this is looked at as a bad thing with Skip Bayless. And another criticism that people brought toward Allen Iverson and his generation is that, the ratings have gone downhill so far. From when Michael played. He's good, but he's not Michael Jordan. Well, Allen Iverson never tried to be Michael Jordan. He tried to be Allen Iverson. And I think he did damn good to be playing with, he went to the finals once. He was MVP. Scored over 24,000 points. If he hadn't been blackballed, in my opinion, out of the NBA the last couple of years, he would have reached 25,000 points. I think that, considering that he played with guys like Jermaine Jones, Aaron McKee, Eric Snow, Tyrone Hill, an older Tyrone Hill, I believe. Okay. I think he did pretty damn good, considering he didn't really have any scoring options. I think he played with George Lynch. These aren't guys that pop into people's brains like as far as scorers. You know what I'm saying? And also, I saw Skip reference him as being a point guard. Allen Iverson did not play the point guard position. When he first came to the NBA, he played the point guard position. Okay, he did. Jerry Stackhouse was the shooting guard. The earlier version of Allen Iverson averaged 21, 22, 23 points per game, 7 assists, okay, which is pretty close to what you see with Stephen Curry. Though he was not the outside shooter that Stephen Curry was, but he was a better scorer, in my opinion, but not shooter. But for the vast majority of his career, Allen Iverson played the two-guard position. He was a shooting guard. That's what he generally played. Eric Snow was the point guard. Allen Iverson at times handled point guard duties, but for all intents and purposes, he was a shooting guard. So you don't expect a shooting guard to average a lot of assists, but he did. Allen Iverson did average 6 assists per game for his career. Had seasons averaging 8 assists per game. Pete Maravich never averaged that many assists. Despite the fact that Pete Maravich probably played with a little bit better players, especially when he was with the Atlanta Hawks. That's another thing. Pete Maravich also, let me put it like this. Pete Maravich, you can make the argument, never made people around him better. There's no reason why those teams with Pete Maravich and Lou Hudson should have done a little bit better than they did. New Orleans, when he was with the New Orleans Jazz, you have to wonder why some of those teams didn't do a little bit better. Not saying they should have been 50 wins, but they should have done a little bit better. He didn't really, to me, he scored, but it didn't always transition into helping those around him better. being better and the team ultimately better for it. I don't understand why when he was with New Orleans, you had Pete Maravich leading the NBA in scoring. You had Truck Robinson leading or damn near leading the NBA in rebounds with 17, 18 boards a game. Why is it that team never became better than what they were? I don't know. But Allen Iverson, I think he did make his team better by what he did, which was score. Okay, he scored. He wasn't the best defender, but he probably put more effort into defense than Pete Maravich, and that's why I say that I think he's better than Pete Maravich, a guy who I no longer view as a top 50 all-time player. He's a great player. I think he's top 55, top 60 perhaps, but he's a little bit overrated. And let me finish off by saying this too. I was alluding just earlier, and I kind of went away from it. People in Allen Iverson's generation were criticized for, the lower ratings compared to the Michael Jordan era. Well, I mean, no shit. You had a total shift in generation. You had guys like Michael Jordan retiring, John Stockton going downhill, and as far as Karl Malone is concerned, you had Clyde Drexler retiring, Magic and Bird had left. All right, Akeem Olajuwon was declining. All of these guys who were making the league, ratings-wise incredible for all the duration of the 90s, were leaving the scene. It took a while for the league to make adjustments and people to, get acclimated to the new stars, but it did occur. But Pete Maravich never was a ratings bonanza player. Matter of fact, in the 1970s, the NBA was airing games on tape delay. They were airing games at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody was watching. The league was dying. Now, from a purist perspective, it was very interesting to see how so many different teams, with the parity in the NBA, so many different teams had a chance of winning a title and going to the playoffs, but the ratings were terrible. And it took a merger with the other league, the Black League, the ABA. And I said the Black League because a whole bunch of black guys went over there because playing for the money. Poor people, poor guys. It was coming from the ghettos. They were the ones offered making all the big bucks in the ABA. Even Rick Barry went over there for the De Niro. Rick Barry jumped ship from the NBA, as well as another inductee to this year's Hall of Fame, Zelmo Beatty. He left the NBA and go to the ABA for the money. It took the merger and a black guy, Julius Erving, to help save the league. Julius Erving was one of the ones who helped save the league. And then with Magic and Bird, they just took it to new heights, and then Michael Jordan to unprecedented heights that they couldn't even have fathomed 15 years earlier. So if you shit on Allen Iverson, Skip Bayless, I think you should be more honest about the real reason why you don't like Allen Iverson, because I don't think you're being truthful. Allen Iverson was the answer.